let's do this. A deep dive into, well, a word you use every day but probably don't think much about. Had.
Had.
And we all use it.
Yeah.
But I was looking at all these sentences and phrases people send in, and
Oh, yeah.
they show how much this little word actually does. So many different uses.
I mean, I guess so, yeah.
So that's our mission today,
Okay.
to figure out how had does all that.
Awesome.
Okay, so we can start easy, right?
Sure.
Had is just simple past tense.
Right?
Like I had breakfast at 7 a.m.
Straightforward.
Super basic, yeah. But then we get sentences like, she had gone home by the time I arrived.
Yep. Okay.
Still past tense, but I don't know, there's something more going on.
Right. You're getting into what we call the past perfect tense now.
Oh.
It's not just that something happened, but that it happened before some other event in the past.
I see, like it creates this sequence.
Exactly. Think about reading a mystery novel.
Yeah.
You know, figuring out who did it might depend on understanding what happened before the main action.
So had can be a clue.
Yeah, little time machine built right into the sentence.
I like that. But then it gets, well, kind of mind-bending.
How so?
Because had can also be used for things that didn't even happen.
Oh, you mean like those what-if situations?
Exactly.
Counterfactuals?
Yeah. Like, had I known you were coming, I would have baked a cake.
Classic example.
Or had I studied harder, maybe I'd have aced that test.
Right, you hear that sort of regret there?
Totally. Like a, if only.
Exactly. A grammatical sigh, almost.
And the word order is so different in those sentences, too. Had I known instead of if I had known.
Yeah.
It sounds so formal.
It does, right? Like something Shakespeare would write.
Right, but even in just these few examples, it's amazing how much one little word can do.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've got past tense had, rewind the timeline had, and now what if had.
Right.
But then things get really interesting when we get into idioms.
Yes. My favorite.
Because now had doesn't literally mean possess anymore.
Yeah.
It's stuff like have a good time, have a feeling, have a chance.
Exactly, it's everywhere.
It is. But some of these are so specific in their meaning. Like, had a crush.
Yeah, what about it?
It's not just liking someone, it's that whole thing, right? The butterflies, the secret glances.
That's it. And that's what makes idioms so powerful, that emotional weight. They tap into those universal experiences.
Like, had a bad day. We all know that feeling.
Oh, tell me about it.
It's not just, neutral. It's like, ugh, this day is the worst.
Exactly. Full of frustration, maybe even a little bit of self-pity.
It's like had becomes this container for all those rotten day feelings. But looking at all these other phrases folks sent in, it's amazing how much of our lives, big and small, we talk about using had.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, you had a go at fixing the car, you had a crack at solving the puzzle, we had second thoughts about quitting that job. It's almost like this thread running through our day.
Totally. Marking all those attempts, our little victories, our struggles.
Okay, so we've done basic had, past perfect, even those what-if statements, and now idioms. This is already way more than I expected. Is there even more to this?
Oh, there's definitely more. When I was looking at these examples, what really struck me was how had can be used with other verbs to add like another layer to the action.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so we had a go at something, we had a crack at something. It implies a certain effort, like you really tried. And it's often kind of informal too, like you wouldn't write had a crack at in a research paper,
Right. It's more like everyday talk.
Exactly.
Yeah, it gives it more personality. And some of them are super specific too, like had second thoughts.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just thinking about something again. It's more like you change your mind. Maybe some doubt crept in.
Exactly. You're getting at that extra layer of meaning again.
So we're adding on to had, using these other verbs to create all these different shades of meaning. Had a dream, had a hunch, had a rough time. There are so many. And, a lot of these aren't about you doing something. It's more like having an experience. It's less about what you do and more about what happens to you.
That's a really good point. It almost suggests had can be about being passive.
Passive.
Well, maybe not passive exactly, more like receptive. Open to whatever life throws your way.
Okay, I can see that. Like had is the word we use when we're talking about the things that happen to us, the experiences that shape us.
Exactly. Whether we choose them or not.
That's where its power comes from, though.
I think so, because it lets us talk about the whole range of human experience, the everyday stuff and the really big things.
Right, from joy to hardship.
Exactly.
Okay, but it's not all personal experiences, right? Had can be used for bigger things, too. like historical events.
Oh, absolutely. Like the country had a revolution.
Yeah, or the company had a major financial crisis.
Right. It's like zooming out from the individual to society as a whole.
So it's not just one moment. It suggests this whole process, a chain of events.
Yeah, and that leads to a particular outcome.
So had is with us, from personal stories to big historical narratives. But what about the present? Because we don't just use had for the past, right?
Right. It can sneak into the present tense too, and often it's when we're being funny or frustrated.
So I know exactly what you mean.
Like when you say, I've had enough.
Or I've had it up to here.
Exactly. You're using had to express how you're feeling right now.
And usually it's not a good feeling.
Right. It's like had is holding all those pent-up emotions.
And it's funny because you could even use gestures with those phrases too.
Totally. Like literally raising your hand to show how up to here you are.
It's like language and body language working together.
Exactly. To really emphasize the meaning.
So we've seen had in the past tense, shaping narratives, expressing emotions, even going into hypotheticals. This is incredible. But before we wrap up, I'm wondering, is there something that connects all these different uses? Like, what's the essence of had?
That's a great question. And it's actually been debated for a really long time. You know, if I had to sum it up in one word, I'd say had is about possession.
Possession. You mean like owning something?
Not in like a material way, more like having something be part of your experience, your past, your memories, your emotions. When we say, I had a good time, we don't literally own that time, but it's become part of us in a way.
So it's like those experiences, those feelings, they kind of become part of us.
Exactly. They become part of our story, you know, our personal history.
Like had is this big treasure chest holding all these pieces of our lives.
I love that. And we keep adding to it, right? With every new experience, every feeling, every story.
It really makes you look at this word differently. You know, it's this connection to everything we've been through, everything we've ever felt.
And that's why it's such a strong word. It gets at what it means to be human, all those layers of memory and emotion.
I think we've finally cracked the code of had. I mean, who knew there was so much to this little word?
Right. It just goes to show that even the words we use every day can be full of surprises.
Totally. So for everyone listening out there, here's a little challenge for you. Pay attention to how you use had. Notice how it changes the meaning of what you're saying. You might be surprised by what you find.
And remember, language is always changing. The more we play with it, the more we discover.
That's a great point. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep having those aha moments.
Absolutely.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of had. And until next time, keep learning and keep those brain cells working.